Hello guys and welcome back to Planet 40k. We've got another review today. I don't know whether it will be a bite-sized review or a full review, but we're going to go with the flow, and today we're going to be talking about the Neurothrope from the Tyranid Codex. Now you can purchase this, but it's going to be in the box of 3 and they're going to be either the Zoanthropes or the Venomthropes for £42.50, but from March onwards the prices will actually go up. Now previously these things were 100 points, they are now 110 points, and they are of course a Psychic Synapse character within the HQ selections of our Codex. They've also got the infantry keyword. So let's move on to the datasheet and check out what the Neurothrope is all about. As for the actual datasheet, movement of 6 inches, weapon skill 5+, ballistic skill 3+, strength 5, toughness 5, wound 6, attacks 2, leadership 10 and a 5+ armor save. Now the ballistic skill and weapon skill don't really have any effect whatsoever. This thing isn't going to be doing damage in either of the shooting phase or the fight phase. All the damage that comes from this model comes in the psychic phase. So don't worry too much about those stats, but toughness 5 with 6 wounds is pretty decent. Now as for the abilities for the Neurothrope, first of all of course Synapse. So units within 6 inches of this Neurothrope are going to automatically pass morale tests. It's also got Shadow in the Warp, which is an aura for enemy psychic units within 18 inches. It's going to be -1 to their psychic tests, and also when they suffer perils of the warp, they suffer 1 additional mortal wound. Nice. Now as for the more unique abilities to the Neurothrope, first of all the Warp Field. So it's got a 3+ invulnerable save, which is quite rare for this edition. This all could change in 10th edition, but as at present, not many things in the actual game have a 3+ invulnerable save. So of course if the invulnerable save does get ignored, it goes down to its 5+, and then yeah, that's not so good, but a 3+ is fantastic. It's then got the Spirit Leech ability, done in the psychic phase. Each time an enemy unit within 18 inches of your Neurothrope suffers a mortal wound, select a friendly Neurothrope or Zoanthrope model within 12 inches of your Neurothrope, and that model regains 1 lost wound to a maximum of 3 in a given phase. Also very good. It's got the Psychic Node to add 1 to the psychic test taken for the model. Very useful, especially for those smites and super smites. And finally the Warp Siphon. In your command phase you select a friendly psychic unit within synaptic link range of this model that has not already been selected for this ability this turn until the start of the next command phase. Each time a psychic test is made for that unit, roll 1 additional d6 and discard 1 of the dice. So again, that's going to help for things such as Smite and Super Smite and other psychic tests that we're going to be using. Now I have mentioned quite a few times now, this is a Psycho model and it's going to be able to manifest 2 psychic powers from the Hive Mind discipline, and it's also going to be able to deny 2 in your opponent's psychic phase. Now as for the 6 generic psychic abilities within the Codex, we'll probably do a video on all these, going through each one, how best to use them, and maybe even do a tier list for them. So for now I will leave that one up to you, and I'll be moving on to the Synaptic Imperative ability that the Neurothrope has. So if you were to select this Psychic Augmentation ability within that turn, while it's active for your army, any friendly Hive Tendril units within 6 inches of the Synapse model is going to have a +1 to their psychic test and a +1 to their Deny the Witch test. Also, each time a model in the unit loses a wound as a result of a mortal wound, on a 5+, the wound is not lost. So a 5+ wound of pain against mortal wounds for that particular turn when they're within 6 inches of a Synapse model. So that's the Synaptic Imperative ability that the Neurothrope is going to bring to the table. What about some notable Warlord traits that you can be putting on your Neurothrope for 1 command point? First of all, the Synaptic Tendrils ability. In the command phase, if this Warlord has one of the following abilities, you can use the ability 1 additional time that phase. So out of the listed abilities, of course, the Neurothrope has the Warp Siphon ability. To be having an extra dice for that psychic test and then discarding the lowest, that one's going to be used an additional time. Or alternatively, you've got the Adaptive Biology Warlord trait, which is each time a Warlord would lose a wound, roll a d6, on a 5+, the wound is not lost. So a 5+ fear no pain against all wounds as opposed to just mortal wounds. That one's really good because of his resiliency that he already has with the 3+ invulnerable save and being able to regain lost wounds with the Spirit Leech ability as well. So that was a Warlord traits. What about some notable relics? Now there's just one I want to mention here today, which is the Resonance Barb. Psychic models only of course, add 1 to the psychic test for the bearer, and the bearer is going to know 1 additional psychic power from the Hive Mind discipline. So all of them are pretty usable. Now if you are using your Neurothrope just to do secondary objectives such as Psychic Interrogation or Warp Ritual, then I wouldn't advise taking this, because of course once you do that psychic action, you're not going to be able to cast any other psychic abilities. But if you're not using them for that purpose, then yeah, having an additional power and +1 to the psychic test is pretty nice. So next I want to talk about some Hive fleets that are going to work well with the Neurothrope. Now to be honest with you, all of the Hive fleets are going to work pretty decent, as the Neurothrope isn't really a damage dealer in terms of melee or shooting attacks, so he kind of works in all of the different Hive fleets. He's also got the options of those Warlord traits to buff units in those particular Hive fleets, but one that I did want to mention here today was the Hydra Hive fleet. Not so much for the fleet abilities, but it's more for the Warlord trait, which is the Endless Regeneration, allowing him to heal himself D3 lost wounds each turn, which is quite nice again on a model with that rare 3+ invulnerable save. That makes him quite a tanky model. Also, the Hydra's Psychic Power, which is Psychic Shriek, is worth a look too. It's a Witchfire attack, Warp Charge 6, and you select one enemy unit within Synaptic Link range or an enemy unit within 18 inches of this Psyker. You roll a d6 for each friendly Hydra infantry unit that's within 3 inches of that enemy unit, or 3d6 for each Hydra monster unit within 3 inches of that unit, and on a 5+ for every single one of those dice, the unit suffers a mortal wound to a maximum of 6 mortal wounds. So this goes really well with the swarms which you're going to be using when you're using Hive Fleet Hydra. That's what they do best. Now there are a couple of other noteworthy mentions for the Hive Fleets. First of all, the Kronos Hive Fleets, purely for their stratagem, which is the Deepest Shadow for 1 command point, which is an aura. While an enemy psychic unit is within 18 inches of this unit, each time a psychic test for that unit is failed, the unit suffers d3 mortal wounds. So not only can you be attempting to deny the witch, but you can also, before you even need to deny the witch, they may just fail anyway. They're going to be taking d3 mortal wounds. Alternatively, you've got the Leviathan Hive Fleet with the Void in the Warp stratagem for 1 command point. In your opponent's psychic phase, after the psychic test has been passed for the enemy psyker, and after you've done your deny the witch attempt, then the enemy psyker that is within 24 inches of any Leviathan Synapse unit, and you roll a d6, on a 4+, the power is denied. So that's after you've tried to deny the witch, and after you've actually failed that deny the witch test, you've still got a 4+ chance, or a 50-50 chance of actually denying that power. Beautiful. Other stratagems of note from the Tyranid Codex, the Power of the Hive Mind is the first one, just to give him an additional psychic power if you wanted one there. Or Synaptic Channeling for 1 command point. You select your Neurothrope, and until the end of the phase, the unit's going to know all the psychic powers by friendly psychic units that are on the battlefield. So for example, if you've got a Broodlord that's got the Catalyst ability, but you really need it with your Neurothrope, just for 1 command point you can literally take that ability, take that psychic power, and then cast it. Right, let's get onto the summary before we get onto our Planet 40k rating at the end of this video. So we get onto the pros, and first of all, it's the cheapest psychic character we've got in our codex. Only by 10 points because the Broodlord is 120, but that's still cheaper. Of course, the ability Synapse has to be a pro, so we're going to add that here. It's also got the fly keyword now, don't get me wrong. He's only moving 6 inches anyway, so he's not going to get around the board that quickly, but fly does sometimes help. He can use the Lookout Sir ability, because he's a character model under 10 wounds. He's got that 3+ invulnerable save, which I think is fantastic. It's such a rarity in the game at the moment. Makes him a very resilient model, especially when he's surrounded by other Zonethropes, which have also got their 4+ invulnerable save. He comes with 2 powers as stock, and there's a couple of ways of giving him additional psychic powers if needed. And he's also got a +1 to his psychic test. So if you are doing Smite, for example, you've got a better chance of actually getting that Super Smite, or just powers in general like Catalyst again, you've got a better chance of actually achieving it. He's got the Spirit Leech ability to heal itself or other Zonethrope models nearby, and the Warp Siphon ability, which makes his casting even easier. And the final pro is, of course, he's going to be useful for the Warpcraft secondaries. Being only 110 points and being able to do either of those Warpcraft secondary options with a resilient model as well, that's pretty good. Now that's the pros. What about the cons? I've got a few for you. First of all, the recent points increased to 110. Okay, is that a con? I'm not sure. I put it here anyway. He used to be 100 points. He's now 10 points more. He's got that slow movement of 6 inches. I mean, okay, you could advance with him, I guess, because he's not going to be shooting or anything like that. But he's not going to be that rapid, so he's going to be staying near the back end of the battlefield. He's got no weaponry, as we've just mentioned, so in the shooting phase as well as the fight phase, he's not going to be doing much. And finally, weapons that ignore invuln saves are going to go straight through him almost, because he's got a 5+ armor save, only needs to be -2 AP, and yeah, that goes straight through, and that will be him done. But for the Planet 40k rating today, I'm going to be going with a Planet 40k rating of 5 stars. One of my favourite Tyranids HQs, definitely using him in almost all of my games in fact, just very useful, very resilient, and can also do you those secondaries, and also gives a massive assist to those Zonethropes. So guys, if you've enjoyed this content, please drop me a like down below, and remember to subscribe to the channel. We're going to be putting more of these Tyranid reviews on the channel, as well as other videos such as tier lists and things like that, and of course tactic stuff too. Thank you all for watching, and I'm going to see you in the next one.